This summer, millions of people around the world are living with the World Cup. Television networks run daily media campaigns. Brands spend billions of dollars on advertising. The stadiums are wide open to welcome the audience. It is a global festival. But somewhere in America, another story is unfolding. A 2-year-old man is considering whether to buy more medicine this month. A 8-year-old widow is considering whether she can turn on the air conditioner for a few more hours in the evening. A retired couple is cutting back on the smallest expenses to stretch their savings for a few more weeks. The World Cup will last for 39 days. But for them, it's like a countdown. Not counting down to the final match, but rather counting down to when the account hits rock bottom. In the coming minutes, we will explore why more and more American seniors feel financially insecure, despite having done almost everything right throughout their lives. There is an interesting thing that young people often do not understand, but most people who have passed the age of 60 feel very clearly. When we were young, we looked at life through the clock on the wall. We count time by days, by months, by years. But when they reach retirement age, many people start living according to a different clock. An invisible clock not hanging in the kitchen or living room. It lies in the bank account, in the retirement fund, in the savings numbers accumulated over a lifetime. Every morning when you wake up, that clock ticks a little more, without making a sound, no alarm. But it's still running. This month's medicine expenses, this month's electricity bill, this weekend's trip to the supermarket, and then a very familiar thought appeared in many people's minds. If everything continues to get more expensive, how long will this money last? What is noteworthy is that many people who carry that worry are not poor at all. They have their own houses. They receive Social Security. They have a 401k, IRA, or some savings. However, they still feel uneasy. That is the point that surprises many economists. A recent survey shows that the biggest fear of many older Americans is no longer illness or aging. That is the fear of running out of money before life ends. It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? A lifetime of working to accumulate wealth. But when you finally have time to enjoy life, what keeps you awake at night is the question, do I have enough money to continue enjoying it? If you've ever stood in a supermarket and unconsciously stared at food prices longer than before, if you've ever postponed a doctor's appointment just to wait another month, or if you've ever opened your bank statement more times than necessary, leave a comment below. You are not alone in that feeling. And this is what makes the story more thought-provoking. Researchers have even named this phenomenon, fear of running out. The fear of running out of money, not running out of money today, not next month. But it's the fear of one day in the future, when age has increased, health has declined, and choices have diminished. That financial clock doesn't run faster because you spend extravagantly. It runs faster when the price of medicine increases, when insurance premiums increase, when a simple meal is also more expensive than last year, and that's why many people feel like they are running in a race where the finish line keeps getting pulled further away. If what we've just discussed sounds familiar to you, please like and subscribe to follow along for more in-depth analyses. And in the next part, we will explore a little discussed truth. The fastest rising thing may not be the inflation you see in the news, but the type of inflation that is silently eroding the lives of the elderly every day. And that's where the real story begins. If you watch the news every day, you have probably heard a lot about inflation. The numbers are announced on television, the charts going up and down, the explanations that the situation is getting better or worse. But after many years of observing life, I realized something interesting. Sometimes what tires us the most doesn't clearly appear on those charts, because the elderly do not live in an economy exactly as the news reports describe. It may sound strange, but think about it. A 30-year-old can cut back on a trip. They can postpone buying a new car. They can eat out fewer times each month. But what about a 70-year-old? They can't postpone heart medication, cannot postpone the doctor's appointment, can't tell my body to wait a few more months before it starts hurting. And that is the first twist in this story. What is increasing the fastest for many elderly people is not the things they want to buy. but rather the things they are forced to buy. Imagine two shopping carts. One belongs to a young person, one belongs to a retiree. When airfare prices go up, young people can change their plans. But when the prices of medicine, insurance, or healthcare rise, retirees have almost no similar options. It's no longer discretionary spending. That is the cost to maintain daily life. This is the point that has begun to attract the attention of many economists. Some recent studies show that healthcare and long-term care costs are rising faster than many people's perception of overall inflation. In other words, there are people who see the news saying that inflation has cooled down, but when they open their bills, they don't feel that cooling at all. It's a feeling that's very hard to describe. It's like standing in the rain and hearing someone say that it's stopped. If you've ever felt that way, leave a comment below. In your opinion, which expense has increased the most in recent years? Medications? Insurance? Food? I believe that many people watching this video have the same answer. And here is the next noteworthy point. What keeps many people awake at night is not this month's bill. Usually, they still manage to get by. What worries them is the calculation that spans many years. If the medication increases a little each year, if insurance increases a little each year, if all medical services increase a little each year, then after 5 years, 10 years, what will happen to the savings they once thought were sufficient? That's how the financial clock silently runs faster. If these analyses make you think, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us. Because in the next part, we will explore an even more surprising paradox. Why so many people have their own homes, Social Security, and even savings, yet still live with a constant sense of unease. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of modern aging. Perhaps one of the strangest paradoxes of old age is this. When we are young, we think that money will bring a sense of security. We work hard, save, pay off the mortgage, contribute to the retirement fund, hoping that one day we will no longer have to worry. But then many people reach the age of 65, 70, or even 75 and discover a surprising truth. They have more assets than when they were young. They have their own house. They receive Social Security every month. They have a 401k, IRA, or a lifelong savings account. However, the feeling of unease remains. That's the point that many young people find hard to understand. They look at a retiree with a fully paid-off house and think that person must be very at ease. But life doesn't operate that simply, because the biggest worry of old age is often not the amount of money one has, but the number of years left that no one knows. When you are 35 years old, the future is an open door. When you are 70 years old, the future resembles a foggy road. You can still see ahead, but you don't know how long it is. And that makes every calculation much more difficult. A savings of $300,000 can be a lot of money, or it might not be enough. It all depends on a question that no one can answer. How long will you need it? And perhaps that is why many experts call this a crisis of uncertainty rather than just a financial crisis. Try to picture this. When we were young, we climbed mountains. Each step is forward. But old age is like walking on a long bridge shrouded in mist. The frightening thing is not the bridge. The scary thing is that no one knows how much longer the bridge is. And this is a thought-provoking truth. Many recent surveys show that millions of retirees are unsure how long their savings will last. Not because they are overspending, not because they are irresponsible, but because life expectancy is increasing, medical costs are rising, and unexpected events in life always occur no matter how well we prepare. If you are watching this video and have ever wondered, will I have enough money for the next 10 years? 15 years from now? What about it? Let us know in the comments. That is the question that many people of the same generation are quietly carrying in their hearts. But perhaps the most profound thing lies here. The worry of many elderly people doesn't really start from the number in the account. It starts with the feeling of losing the ability to predict life, because humans can endure hardship, but it is very difficult to live comfortably with prolonged uncertainty. In the next part, we will step into an even more thought-provoking contrast. While the whole world is celebrating the World Cup, billions of dollars are being spent on the biggest football festival on the planet. In many places across the United States, A completely different story is unfolding behind the doors of ordinary homes. And that very contrast will show why more and more people feel the gap between the economy and the news and real life is widening. Don't take your eyes off it because the story ahead is even more captivating. There is something quite strange about modern life. Sometimes, two completely different stories can unfold simultaneously in the same country. This season, the world is celebrating. The stadiums are brightly lit. Cheering songs resound from bars, restaurants, to public squares. Airlines are packed with passengers. Hotels are raising their prices. Big brands spend millions, even billions of dollars on advertising. The World Cup appears on TV screens, phones, billboards, and in almost every conversation. From a distance, this looks like a picture of prosperity. But if you take a few more steps, leaving the stadium and entering the quieter residential areas, you will see a different picture. A 73-year-old man is standing in front of the food counter, holding two identical cartons of eggs but taking a few minutes to compare every cent of difference. A retired woman is sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator, trying to rearrange next month's budget. An elderly couple decided to postpone their non-urgent health checkup by a few more weeks, just to feel more at ease about their bank account. Notably, while the World Cup is expected to generate billions of dollars in spending, tens of thousands of temporary jobs, and streams of people flocking to major cities, many elderly individuals are focusing on much smaller numbers. Not billions. But it's $5, $10, $20. Small amounts of money that never appear in financial news yet determine the sense of security for millions of families. Have you ever realized this? When we were young, we often looked at the big numbers: salary, the value of the house, an investment. But as we age, life begins to be measured by much smaller details: the price of medicine, electric bill, insurance premium, a single tank of gas. And this is a thought-provoking turnaround. Many people don't feel left behind because they have nothing. They feel uneasy because the world seems to be moving at a different pace than their lives. While cities are hosting festivals, they are holding very private meetings with themselves before each bill is due. While people talk about the economic opportunities from the World Cup, they wonder if food prices will rise even more next month. If you've ever felt the gap between what you hear on the news and what happens in daily life, please share your thoughts in the comments. I believe that many people watching this video will understand exactly that feeling. And perhaps the most thought-provoking thing is not that there are two stories happening, but both are true. The America of festivals exists. The America of bills also exists. But in the next part, we will step into an even less talked about truth, because the crisis that many elderly people are experiencing does not appear on the front pages of newspapers, does not create shocking headlines. It happens quietly, little by little, like the tide rising in the night. And it is precisely that quietness that makes it noteworthy. Let's keep going. Perhaps the most notable crisis in America today is the one we rarely see on television. It's not like 2008. There are no lines of people waiting in front of the bank. There are no huge headlines about the market crash. There are no chaotic scenes that make the entire country stop to watch. On the contrary, it happens very quietly. So quiet that many people living in it every day can't even name it. That is the shrinking of life. Little by little, every small decision, each small sacrifice. One day, you decide not to have breakfast with your friends anymore. Not because I don't like it, just want to save a few more dollars. A month later, you drive less. Not because you don't want to go out. It's just that the price of gasoline and other expenses make you think twice. Then comes a hot summer, and you wait a little longer before turning on the air conditioner. Not because you like the heat, but because you have started thinking about the bill before thinking about comfort. Life often doesn't change with big shocks. It changes with hundreds of small decisions that are almost invisible. And then one day, when you look back, you realize your world has become much smaller than before. Fewer trips, fewer meetings, fewer spontaneous joys, fewer things that once made life vibrant. What is worth pondering is that most of these people did not make that decision because they wanted to. They are just up. Humans always have an incredible ability to adapt, but sometimes Adaptation comes at a cost, because every time we cut an expense, we often think we are just giving up an item or an activity. In reality, sometimes we are giving up a part of our connection to life. A coffee with friends is not just a cup of coffee. A visit to relatives is not just a few hours of driving. An outing for dinner is not just a meal. Those are the small threads that keep people connected to the community, to joy, and to the feeling of truly living. If you've ever realized that you've quietly given up something you love just because of rising costs, please share below. I believe that many people watching this video will understand exactly that feeling. And this is what makes the story even more haunting. Many people think a financial crisis starts when the account balance hits zero. But sometimes the crisis actually begins long before that. It starts the moment a person stops doing what they love because they no longer feel safe doing it. Not losing money first, but rather losing freedom first. If these thoughts resonate with you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to continue supporting the channel. Because in the next part, we will touch on an even deeper truth. After all the bills, the savings, and the financial worries, perhaps what many elderly people truly fear is not running out of money. It's something else, a very human thing, and when realizing that, the whole story will change in a completely different way. Perhaps after all we've talked about inflation, bills, and savings, it's time to talk about what lies deeper beneath all those numbers. Because the longer I observe life, the more I realize one thing. The real fear of many elderly people is not running out of money. Money is just the most visible thing, like the tip of an iceberg. The submerged part is what keeps many people tossing and turning at midnight. That is the fear of losing the right to self-determination in one's own life. Think about this for a moment. When we were young, we often saw money as a tool to buy the things we wanted. But as we enter old age, money begins to take on a different meaning. It buys independence. It buys the ability to drive oneself wherever one wants. It buys the right to choose its own doctor. It buys the feeling that when something unexpected happens, we can still stand on our own 2 feet. What worries many people is not the account balance hitting zero, but rather the day they no longer have the ability to make the most basic decisions in life. There is a very nice saying, people do not just want to live. People want to live life on their own terms. And old age makes that statement more profound than ever. Therefore, when an elderly person sees the rising cost of healthcare, they don't just see a bigger bill. They see the risk of having to depend on others sooner than expected. When their savings are eroded by rising prices, they don't just see the numbers go down. They see the gap between their current life and the independence they have spent a lifetime building. That's why many people can endure financial difficulties quite well, but find it very hard to accept the feeling of becoming a burden. Not because of excessive pride, but because they have spent most of their lives in the opposite position. They used to be the caregivers for their parents, used to raise children, once the problem solver for the whole family. It's not easy to learn how to receive help instead of always giving help one day. If you are watching this video, I want to ask a very sincere question. In your opinion, what is scarier, having less money than expected, or losing the ability to make your own life decisions? Please share your thoughts below. I believe this is the conversation that many people of the same generation want to have. And this is the biggest twist in the entire story. We start the video with the worry of running out of money before the World Cup ends. But now you might also realize that the World Cup is just a countdown clock symbolizing something much bigger. That is the feeling of safety gradually becoming more fragile. That is the feeling of an increasingly unpredictable future. That is the worry of maintaining dignity and independence in the final years of life. And then in the next part, we will arrive at the final truth of the story. And perhaps that is the least recognized aspect. The real issue does not lie in the World Cup, does not lie in inflation, and does not even lie solely in money. It reflects a change in the way society perceives old age, security, and the retirement dream that many have believed in for decades. The World Cup will eventually come to an end. One team will lift the golden trophy. The stadiums will gradually dim their lights. The cheer songs will gradually fade away and then disappear. News agencies will move on to the next story. And like all major events in life, what once captured the world's full attention will eventually become a memory. But perhaps by now, we all understand that today's story was never really about the World Cup. The World Cup is just a clock. A clock helps us see another countdown quietly happening in the lives of millions of elderly people, not a countdown to the final match, but counting down to the next price increase, to the next bill, to the next year, to the next question that no one wants to ask: are we still safe enough? And upon closer inspection, we will realize that many people carrying this worry are not those who live irresponsibly or make impulsive financial decisions. On the contrary, they are the ones who have done almost everything society ever advised them to do. They have been working steadily for decades. They save, they pay taxes, they raise children, they paid off the home loan. They prepare for old age from a very young age. However, today, many of them still feel that the future is less certain than they had once imagined. That is a paradox worth pondering, because when a few people face difficulties, we can see it as a personal circumstance. But when millions of people share the same concern, perhaps the story has become much bigger. Perhaps this is no longer just an individual issue, but rather a sign that the sense of security that many generations once trusted is gradually changing. Think about this. For most of their lives, people are not truly seeking infinite wealth. What they seek is peace of mind. It's the feeling that after many years of hard work, they can finally breathe slowly, can sleep better, can enjoy the remaining years without constantly looking at the numbers. But what many people are troubled by today is that they have reached retirement age, yet that sense of peace does not come with it. If you find these thoughts worth pondering, please like and subscribe so that more people can join this conversation. And before we finish, I want to leave you with a question. Perhaps this is the most important question of the entire video. If a generation has worked hard, saved, built families, and prepared for the future their whole lives, but still worries about tomorrow, is this still a story about money? Or is this really a story about what we all desire as we grow old? To live our final years with a sense of security, dignity, and peace of mind. And that will also be what we reflect on in the conclusion of the video. And perhaps that is the most thought-provoking thing. The World Cup will eventually come to an end. The matches will pass. The big headlines will eventually be replaced by new stories. But for millions of older Americans, the question of financial security will remain. Not everyone is afraid because of a lack of money. Many people are afraid because the feeling of certainty is becoming more fragile than before. And perhaps that is the conversation that society needs to pay more attention to in the coming years. And what about you? In your opinion, what is the biggest pressure on retirees today? Medical costs, food, housing, or the feeling that the future is becoming increasingly unpredictable? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I always read and greatly appreciate the perspectives from our community. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on economic, social, and life stories that directly impact millions of Americans every day. The content in this video is intended for informational, educational, and discussion purposes regarding economic and social trends. The video is not financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. Each personal circumstance is different, so viewers should consult appropriate experts before making any personal finance decisions. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and see you in the next video.